Hey guys, welcome back to Reeled In. I posted my WandaVision episode 6 reaction video a few days ago, and I promised you guys an analysis video, so you're gonna get one. I feel like I say this about almost every episode of WandaVision, but a lot happened. So this is my take. So this episode of WandaVision opened with late 90s, early 2000s sitcom. It modeled itself after Malcolm in the Middle with the intro credits. I'm still not sure what the 80s sitcom opening credits was based after. So if you know, please leave a comment because I'd also like to know. I think that in this episode, the characters were dressed in their Marvel Comics superhero costumes, and I think that was really funny. Something that I think is funny on the MCU's part is eventually, at some point during their franchise, the characters will earn the outfits that their characters wore in the comics, but they do it in sort of like an ironic way where you were making fun of them for wearing it, basically. And I've already said this in my other video, but I thought it was good to reiterate it because they literally wear their outfits this whole episode. So usually in the other episodes of WandaVision, we kind of have to wait a little while into the episode to kind of get what's actually going on. But I think in this episode, they start off right on the bat. And it starts off with no other but Peter Maximoff. We sort of see throughout this whole episode that Peter knows a lot more than he's letting on. Like when he's talking to Wanda in the opening scene and he says, "You probably suppressed a lot of trauma."
You probably suppressed a lot of the trauma.
I think that is a direct line as to what Wanda is doing now with her reality making and, trapping all these people in Westview, if that's what she's doing. It also seems to me that this Quicksilver / Peter is trying to sort of become like a father figure. I think it's interesting that when he scares the twins, the first thing he says is that blood is thicker than water. And they were talking about, I think, Billy being scared of his uncle because I think he's a vampire or whatever. So the comment could make sense with that, but usually when you're pretending to be a vampire or something, I feel the first phrase that would come out of your mouth would be I want to suck your blood, or something similar or along those lines. But Peter says blood is thicker than water, which alludes to family ties usually, how the bond between family is strongest and the hardest to break. So is Peter trying to remove or replace Vision with himself as the other male family member?
Twins need a father figure for the night. Don't sweat it, sis. I got the old XY chromosome. Uncle Pete to the rescue, huh?
Speaking of Vision, I think in the future he might be a catalyst for Wanda's powers. As he tries to, and maybe continue to try to get out of Westview, or at least figure out what's going on. So we see that Wanda actually threatens to turn Peter into a pickled herring. And I wonder if that is supposed to be a nod to a red herring. Maybe that this Peter himself is a red herring. In literature and media, a red herring is something, especially a clue, that is or is intended to be misleading or distracting. So is this not Peter, or is he going to pose as a distraction for Wanda for the continuation of the series? The amount of hate I have for director Squidward is immense. And I think he's the reason why Monica was not put as director of Sword. And we'll get to him a bit later because I have something to say about him. So in this WandaVision series, I think it's important to really pay attention to the details, whether it be dialogue or even the background props in the show. So when the twins are taking the twins trick-or-treating, they run away and Peter yells, "Unleash hell, demon spawn."
Unleash hell, demon spawn!
Now, if you've watched my videos, I've mentioned the comics a few times and how in the comics Wanda does magic herself pregnant and then gives birth to twins. It's later discovered that the reason how the twins are alive is because Mephisto, the Marvel Comics alternate realm dwelling demon, has actually put a piece of his own soul into the twins. In a weird way, making himself their dad? Which means that technically Vision isn't actually the father. So my question is, why did Peter say that? And if what I'm saying is true, how does he know that? A part of me wonders that if, at least subconsciously, Wanda may also know or suspect something is off with Peter. Immediately after he says this comment, Wanda tries to test him with a question about their past, but he quickly catches on and diverts her question. And I feel like this whole trick-or-treating scene leaves a lot of weird clues and cookie crumbles. Like when Wanda spots Herb, he's seen wearing like an earpiece, something that like a special agent would wear, which in this scenario and I think period of time is a weird piece for Herb to be wearing. At first I, and I'm sure some other viewers, thought it was maybe Vision who gave him the earpiece, but directly after thinking this, Herb says that Vision isn't on duty. So that has me thinking, why is Herb wearing the earpiece and who is he talking to? And then things get more weird when he starts to relay Peter and the twins' mischief a moment before it actually happens. Similar to Agnes, Herb seems to be somewhat aware of his situation. He asks Wanda if she needs something changed, sort of like a line or a scene in a script. Also, you'd think with the amount of desire Wanda has to keep this reality and her loved ones, that she'd be more concerned that Vision is essentially going AWOL. But who shows up at the right moment to distract her? Her brother. So simultaneously to this scene, we see Vision doing some exploring of his own as to what is actually happening in the town. We see a woman on a loop hanging decorations as well as her husband behind her, and she's crying. But why is she stuck on this loop? Like, if Wanda is the one controlling everyone in Westview, like I think it'd take a lot of concentration to keep everyone moving as they should. So the more Wanda is distracted by her brother, I think maybe the more she loses her concentration on the rest of the townspeople. Then we get a Yo Magic commercial, and usually these commercials hint at Wanda's past and seem to be linked to scenarios where Wanda experienced trauma. I've seen some thoughts on how this commercial in particular is Wanda basically being killed by the grief she's feeling. But I think it can be taken more literally. I think the Yo Magic is Wanda's powers, but why would she be trying to eat her own powers? I think the kid stranded on the island is maybe the villain, whoever that may be, and in reality, he's feeding off of Wanda's powers. But it isn't enough. He keeps trying to rip open the Yo Magic yogurt, I'm assuming, thing, but he's starving to death. I think in order to sustain himself, this villain needs to feed off of her magic. Now, in this scene, notice how in the background, we see The Incredibles and The Parent Trap on the movie theater. The Incredibles is a movie about a family that has superpowers, and The Parent Trap could refer to Wanda's twins, maybe trying to reunite Wanda with their dad, whoever that may be. Also, in this scene, Peter says exactly why he came to Westview.
Come to town unexpectedly, create tension with the brother-in-law, stir up trouble with the Rugrats, and ultimately give you grief.
He's here to give Wanda grief. Now, some people may think that this is another villain who feeds off of people's sadness, and I think that's a great and plausible theory, but a part of me wonders if maybe it means something else. We all know Wanda's been through turmoil and has suffered tremendous losses. So I wonder if maybe Peter is here to help Wanda complete the cycle of grief. But honestly, I don't think she has genuinely started the cycle. Like Wanda is not allowing herself to grieve over her losses and ultimately heal. So maybe that's what either Peter is trying to help her with or what Wanda is trying to do for herself. And that form just happened to take the shape of her brother. So now we're back to the OTT, the One True Trio, and Darcy discovers that Squidward found a way to see the inside of Westview. But how? Literally all their attempts have been thwarted by Wanda's reality sensor screen thing she put up, which makes me think back to Herb and his earpiece. We don't actually find out who he was talking to. But what if it was Squidward? And how would Squidward be able to see into the hex if he wasn't already a part of it? We also learn that he's tracking Vision in Westview, and Darcy discovers a secret project, Project Cataract. At first, I kind of thought that was like a weird name for a project, but a cataract is a clouding of the normally clear lens of your eye. And what did Vision's eyes look like when he died? They looked blank and cloudy. This could also just be sort of like Hayward wants to pull the wool over everyone's eyes so that like he can do his own measures, whatever that may be. So that could also be a possibility. So now Vision makes it to the edge of town and everyone is frozen. This may be because since they aren't in Wanda's immediate vicinity, she may not need them and sort of puts them on pause. This may be what she does every day, and then once the evening is done for her, she sort of rewinds everyone back into their houses for the next day to start. So maybe that's what she's doing. Another possibility that I thought of was that we know that the boundary of the hex has a lot of radiation. So it may be that the radiation from this border is causing all these weird glitches to happen on the outskirts of town to the people who live closest to it. We also see Agnes in a car at the edge of Ellis Avenue. She's Wanda's next door neighbor. So what was she doing there? Like, how did she get from her there to where no one's supposed to be? The edge of the hex, and why? If you watched my other videos, you'll know that I think Agnes is Agatha Harkness. Agnes implies that Wanda is the one holding everyone captive, but I don't think that's the case. At this point, I'm also not really trusting anything Agnes says. Also because it's followed by an evil witch cackling laugh. Yes. I think it's interesting, though, that she sort of puts the blame on Wanda, because I don't think Agnes is the villain here, and eventually I think maybe if she is Agatha Harkness, we'll team up with Wanda at some point for some reason. I also think it's interesting that, like, the way the signage is played out, it's literally telling people to stop once they reach Ellis Avenue. Or, like, once you get to Ellis Avenue, stop. I think Monica's guy, who she's meeting, is going to be an old face, but a relatively new one for the MCU. We've already seen an introduction with the Peter from the X-Men franchise, so perhaps the astrophysicist will also be from a Fox franchise that further introduces these superheroes to the MCU ones. Also, I think Monica is going to get powers. If you don't want to know what I know about the Marvel comics, then like mute me for like a minute. But if you want to know, then keep listening. So Darcy tells her that going through the boundary twice is rearranging Monica's cells. And there was the whole head scan that turned up a blank. And what I think is interesting, though, is Monica's lack of surprise. Like, she already knows about the changes she's going through. And it's true that astronauts do have some form of radiation and other problems when they go to space a little too often. And her relationship with Captain Marvel would surely allow her to travel to deep space. And maybe that's why her and Captain Marvel seem to be at odds. Is she the reason Monica has or is accumulating powers? Because in the Marvel comics, Monica, also known as Photon, gains superpowers after being bombarded by extra-dimensional energy produced by an energy distribution weapon. Monica's powers allow her to transform into any form of energy found on the electromagnetic spectrum. So could WandaVision be Monica's debut for essentially the second Captain Marvel? Because that's how she is known as in the comics, so who knows? But I am excited to find out. There's another reason why I don't think Wanda is 100% in control of everything that's happening in Westview, is because when Peter brings up the children who just like popped up out of nowhere after like 3 episodes of people asking like, where is the children, and everything being for the children, Wanda says she doesn't know and that she isn't the one who brought them out. But again, Peter easily distracts her from her explanation. Also, it seems that Peter knows of the townspeople's lives before Wanda made the reality. But like, how does he know that? This Peter isn't even from this MCU universe. So like, how does he know what's been happening in this universe? Just like how the memory of the residents of Westview are being affected, I think so is Wanda's, at least with how she may or may not have created her new reality. Then we have the jump scare scene that happens almost every other episode, with us seeing a sneak peek at the dead bodies that Wanda has reanimated, especially with Vision. My first thought upon seeing Peter's dead body was one of confusion, and then if Wanda also reanimated him like she did with Vision. This Peter, though, is from the X-Men universe, so whatever happened to that Peter also happened to this one, which means that this Peter should not have had bullet wounds like Pietro did, because they are 2 different Peters. So that begs the question, why did Wanda see him like that? Or was it this Peter showing Wanda that, again, to distract her? Also notice that how his eyes are clouded over, almost like cataracts. I'm glad that Darcy emailed Jimmy her findings, because when I first watched Darcy get sucked into the hex, I thought her information was lost, and then the team would sort of have to start over again, and they just wouldn't know anything at all, which would be stressful enough. But Darcy is smart. Thank goodness. Again, we see Peter try to distract Wanda from saving Vision, saying it's not like Vision can die twice, which Vision actually did die twice. Once by Wanda's own hand, and then again by Thanos. Also, if Peter is supposed to be the Pietro that died, how does he know about the events that transpired after Age of Ultron? Because if this Peter is that Peter who died, then this Peter who was that Peter should not know of how Vision died. Am I making sense? Does this whole thing make sense? It sounds kinda sus. And again, Vision proves that he's able to hold Thor's hammer because he's just so selfless. He's trying to save the people, even though he himself is dying. He's being ripped to shreds. That scene just like always pulls on my heartstrings. And again, Wanda proves that she is the most powerful, the strongest Avenger. And you can really see the hex shape, and it's honestly an amazing sequence. I like to think she turned that whole sword people in headquarters into a circus, because those people were literally clowns. I'm just mad that she didn't get Squidward. Well, guys, that is all the analysis I have for you today. Those are the things I noticed and thought were just kind of weird. Did I miss anything, especially like background props? I'm not the best at finding those, but if you found something that I didn't, please let me know in the comments. And if you want to see more reaction videos and analysis videos, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe for weekly content. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time.